And now for the main event, right? There's been so much going on here in AR, VR, and so much else that's happening that I want to make sure that we leave as much time as we can for the panel. Be thinking of questions to ask them because we do have a hard stop at 8 o'clock, and we will be done before that. So we leave time at the end for questions. So I want to bring up right now, I want to bring up John Buzzell. John, where are you? Come on, John. John's going to be a moderator this evening, and I'll let him take it away. Thank you.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Okay. So, looking good. All right, great. So, thank you so much for coming tonight. It's really great to see everybody's faces out for VR and AR. One of my roles here in the city is the president of the Atlanta chapter of the VR AR Association, and we get together about 4 times a year. And over the last, I don't know, year and a half, you see these crowds get larger and larger. People are starting to become more aware and excited about this sort of stuff. Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay. So just a brief note of introduction. I got my start in technology about 28 years ago. I've presided over a few different technology transitions. Got started before before CD-ROM, doing interactive multimedia on diskette. So, you know, you would click a button and you'd have to load media from the disk drive, and it would kind of make a funny noise and vibrate. Things have changed a lot, but a lot of things have stayed the same. I'm supposed to be distracting you right now. So in any case, there's screens everywhere, though. In any case, through CD-ROM, through narrowband internet, through broadband, through mobile and social, and now getting into XR or immersive, there's a lot of changing acronyms, but a lot of the things stay the same. So as the Wireless Technology Foundation or people that are interested in it, you're going to see some familiar themes, or you should. So although some of the hardware that's arriving is exciting, it's probably not ready yet to hit the mainstream. And you know, it's important to start now preparing your company or yourself for that transition that's going to happen. Richard, can I help you? Okay, all set? Great. So, so we're going to challenge the notion tonight that things are going to stay the way that they are now forever. Oops, let's back up. All right, so as I mentioned, things keep changing, right? But there's stuff that we can bring along. And the one thing that's been constant through all of this is screens, all right? And I want to talk to you all a little bit about screens. We have a problem with screens. We are totally addicted to screens, and I'm going to prove it to you. And if you don't agree, we can handle it in the questions, but we're going to put it to the panel. I think this is pretty interesting. Going back to 1895, we've been looking at glowing rectangles for a long time. We've gotten fancy to go sit in front of a glowing rectangle, right? We've brought it home with us so that we could share our stories and our moments with these glowing rectangles. We've gone on dates. We've made it part of our lives. Everywhere we go, we want to have these screens. And this is great. That's, what's his name, Costanza from Seinfeld on the left. We've got to have these screens with us everywhere we go. We've got to have big screens. We've got to have special screens that make us feel like we're sitting in the middle of them. I don't care who you are. Everybody loves screens. And the great thing about this video on the right is he's going to get comfy here in a second and just, there we go. Everybody has got their face stuck in a screen. We put them on our wrists, we put them in our cars, and please don't text and drive, and I don't know why they thought of putting a giant iPad in a car that can go 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds or whatever is a good idea, but we have a problem with screens. We have them in our homes, on the walls, on the coffee tables, on the refrigerators, on the, our coffee makers want to talk to us. Our egg tray wants to talk to us on a screen. This is ridiculous. We give up our logistical efficiencies. We give up our physical safety. We give up very important focus with people that we care about for screens. And what comes with screens? Buttons, right? Like, there was that big thing with the BlackBerry when we moved to the iPhone. It's like, oh my God, no more buttons. But it was just another way to do more and different buttons. And it just doesn't end. The more IoT, the more 5G, the more cloud and blockchain and all these enabling technologies, the more AI is just more and more buttons. And it's inevitable that we all are going to feel overwhelmed. So I thought, when we talked to the WTF about doing AR and VR, I thought, let's just imagine life beyond screens, right? You've got, over the last 70 years, computers have been doing a slow motion merger with our brains, everything from university campuses to the workplace to our backpacks and pockets. What comes next? If you look at all of these technologies, 5G, cloud computing, Internet of Things, AI, where's the screen? We're all visual creatures, but yet there's no way these are invisible ingredient technologies. We're going to need some sort of way to interface with this stuff, and voice isn't going to be enough, not for everything. So there's all this acronyms out in the market. God bless HTC Vive for putting out see-through reality. I don't know what they were thinking with that, but now we've got another, something R. We're just going to call it immersive for a while until stuff settles down. So when we say immersive or XR, this is what we're talking about. Obviously, if you look at the biggest forces for capital in the world, they're all saying the same sort of thing, which is AR is what comes next. It's going to be breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Devices are kind of going away, and it's the biggest thing since the iPhone. So no matter which projection you look at, it's lots of billions of dollars happening sometime in the next 10 years. So what are we going to do about that? You all are probably aware that the main terms out there are augmented, mixed reality, virtual reality on the augmented side, digital objects in our physical world. And you interact with them on devices like an iPad or a phone or maybe even a headset. Microsoft wants you to call it mixed reality. You roll a digital ball off a physical wall, it bounces and rolls back. Virtual reality, you're in a digital world and you're interacting with it physically. VR takes you someplace else. AR can help you in the real world. This is kind of creepy, but that's probably where things will go. And distribution's getting a lot better, right? Hundreds of millions of devices at $500 each with augmented reality, and we'll talk a little bit about Porsche's journey there tonight. Mixed reality, Microsoft is making inroads. It feels like 100,000 devices. And then VR, whether it's mobile or whether it's on a headset, it's getting more and easier every day with that. And there's lots of devices. Click. Okay, I just thought this was fun. The left is Blade Runner, the old one and the new one. The right is Toronto from last year, right? Up there, everybody recognizes Star Wars. On the bottom is Microsoft. So there's this great quote, the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed. You guys are seeing a part of the future tonight. Hopefully you'll take some of this knowledge back. Let's bring up our panel. Yeah, thanks. So very happy to have with us people from all different industries tonight that are going to help us navigate all of this stuff. Oops, pardon me, a little bit of nerves. So we have Amy Shear, Executive Curator Director from CNN. Welcome, Amy. Chloe Cattell from Polyport. We've got Heather Turney from Porsche. We've got Julie Piggott from Southern Company. And we've got Alea Mehta from Raycom Media and USA Today. All right. So I'm just going to skip the obligatory sponsor message. I have a company. We do this stuff. If you want to talk about it later, come talk to me. All right. So I thought it would be good if we gave you a chance to hear a little bit from each of the panelists before we get into discussion. Is that all right? Cool. All right. So Amy, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done with immersive lately at CNN? You know, CNN has this great reputation for being first and being bold with all these new media, whether it's mobile or social. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey at CNN?
Sure. For that.
Sure.
Well, we have a small group of VR and AR champions. Actually, my colleague Lucas Murray is in the audience today. And you know, we have great content. And actually, one of our best attributes is we have a lot of video content. So our VR experiences have really been designed to accentuate that and amplify our video content. The value that we bring to many products, because we get a lot of partnership interests, you know, from companies like Google and Samsung and Oculus and others, is that we have daily content that helps, you know, increase a daily consumption and viewer experience. So because our content is refreshed daily, many platforms want us on the platform. So we just launched an app called CNN VR and Oculus Go and Oculus Rift. And what's really fun about it is we've pushed ourselves to actually view video in a very different way. It's much more fun and engaging. We've really explored UI to be much frictionless, easy pagination,
Right.
easy to grab video, play with how you want to consume it, whether it's 2D or whether it's 360, the environment changes. And it really puts you at the center of the control room of the future.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling us,
Thank you.
telling us that. You know, as a former Time Warner person, I know that you all do create tons of assets to tell all these stories, whether it's entertainment or news, and that produces a lot of assets to tell those stories. Chloe Cattell, tell us about Polyport and asset security and how important that is for XR.
Let's see if this thing is on. Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I resonate, so if you can't hear me, then let me know. But I am the CEO of Polyport. We're a 3D asset protection platform, being able to leverage distributed workforces around the globe to work on sensitive assets and make sure that they... Hello, no?
Turn it on and give it a second.
Okay, there we go. All right,
Success.
so we're developing a 3D asset protection platform so that you can leverage distributed workforces around the globe to work on sensitive IP, but not steal the underlying IP. Now, in VR and AR, there are a couple of things to think about. First being that the integrity of the asset. So consider that what are the possible ramifications if someone were to manipulate the information that you have in a mission-critical environment such as law enforcement or military. For example, let's say an Army officer is in a command unit and they're about to press the button to fire the next drone missile. Well, if they see a screen in front of them that's displaying, hey, this is friend, this is enemy, and that information is manipulated, think about the implications of that. In addition to that, you could also think about the industrial manufacturing space, a plant operator, if that information is manipulated as well, what that could cause for potentially blowing up a plant. So we're talking about anything from corporate takedown to reputational damage, and so we're working on being able to protect that for these individuals as they go through the development process.
Very good. So Heather and I had a chance to work together last year on an AR/VR project, and I know that asset security for 3D assets is really important to you all. You want your cars to look well. Can you tell us a little bit about Porsche Cars North America and how you all are extending your brand with AR and VR?
Yeah, so thank you everyone for having us here. What we're looking at Porsche, certainly in North America for our scope, is how do we augment and support the customer experience? And we're looking at that using this technology both in terms of the actual customer experience, so how do we provide new tools for them to either see or visualize a car that they're dreaming about that they want to fully customize, or perhaps a car that we have announced but their physical asset isn't there yet. So how are we actually looking at providing them all the tools to get as close to that dream car as they can get, while it's over in Germany being built or designed. On the flip side, we're also looking at how do we support the customer experience using this technology from the back end. So we've done a lot of work specifically with our dealers and our after-sales team to see how can we use AR in our dealerships to support the service experience. So how do we get more tools in context for our service folks so they can repair our cars as quickly as possible, so they can provide real-time information and visibility to our customers while their cars are being worked on. What we know is, for our customers, these cars really are, their babies. This is an aspiration that they've been able to attain and to drive, and that we want that experience to be as thrilling and as visceral as possible when they're driving it. So how do we support the other opportunities and the other engagements they have with the brand when the car isn't there or the car has been removed from them? So we really see this as an opportunity for them to be as close to their car throughout their entire customer experience, their entire journey with us. Their entire journey with us, and to help kind of provide more ways for them to tangibly engage.
That's great, thank you. So Julie, Southern Company, I know that our companies have worked together, and we've learned that you are the most innovative company that has to make 30-year plans. And it's kind of amazing how people, when they flick on the light or when they charge their phone, they don't think about where that comes from, but someone somewhere is making sure that they are leveraging technology to the hilt to do it as fast and as cheaply as possible. So you'll have a lot of innovations that have made all that possible. Can you tell us about how you're using AR or VR to demonstrate those innovations?
Sure. So we have an Energy Innovation Center in Midtown Atlanta, and we opened it in 2015, and we get a lot of internal and external visitors that want to learn how to be more innovative. We're there to help enable innovation across Southern Company. But what a lot of visitors don't realize is that Southern Company's been very innovative for a long time, and we have a lot of really cool projects underway. So for instance, outside of Birmingham, Alabama, in Hoover, we've worked with a developer to create a smart neighborhood where the homes are built with the most energy efficient construction materials possible. Smart technology is throughout the home. And the reason that we did that is because we do have to make investment decisions 20 and 30 years out. And so by working with builders on these smart neighborhoods, it gives us an opportunity to see how consumers, once these technologies become more prevalent, will be consuming energy in the future. We're building 2 new nuclear reactors outside of Augusta, Georgia, using the newest nuclear technology. So trying to share what we're working with the City of Atlanta and multiple cities within our footprint on smart city initiatives. So when we get these visitors into the Innovation Center and we're talking about these really interesting, cool projects, PowerPoint just doesn't do it. So yet, not everyone can even go down the street to North Avenue and look at the smart nodes that we've installed. So we worked with You Are Here to develop an augmented reality demonstration display that really brings these projects to life. And it really allows people to see what we're doing, how these applications might apply, and even look at projects that we may not be working on now, but we're thinking about. We show indoor ag pods outside of a school and make the connection about how growing indoors might support STEM as well as provide fresh food to the schools. So it's a new display for us, but it's been very exciting, and we've gotten really great reactions from the people that have been exposed to it. But Southern Company's also been using virtual reality in our operations to conduct training. So while those 2 nuclear reactors are being built, we've been using virtual reality to help train the people that will be operating them when construction is completed.
That's great. Thank you for explaining this. You all are starting to see why we have such a great and diverse panel here, right? Before we move on to Alay, I just want to celebrate that there are so many women here representing thought leadership with AR and VR, right? As somebody with 2 daughters, it gives me great hope to see so many women in technology kicking butt, so thank you for coming. Our next panelist is Alay Mehta from Raycom Media. You've had a really interesting journey with VR that has taken you through technology and hardware and media. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me, by the way. So my journey to VR has been kind of an evolution of technology and I'd say customer need or the need for audience engagement. So I spent a lot of time at Motorola with the whole mobile side of things. And that gave me insight into just the issues of having mobile devices. From there, it took me to media, because that's where media and where the audience and the eyeballs were moving. And to keep it short, that led to the next generation when I was at Turner and CNN, where they suddenly woke up to video and that being the best way to monetize and, of course, provide better footage coverage. And that, with the technology evolving, 360 video became kind of a natural next step. So I got involved with 360 video at Gannett, moved on, so that was another media company. And then we definitely see, all media companies for that matter, the need for immersive and interactive experiences where you don't just observe news, but you're part of that experience. That's, I think, a very crucial goal for almost all media companies, where they want the audience to be experience the news, not just to observe the news. And that led us to AR and VR from the perspective of trying to get that interactiveness and that immersion. I think we are a long way from the technology side of it, but I think the path is clear. And that's how I got to VR. I never thought I'd be there.
Yeah, excellent. So yes, we have this great diverse panel here tonight. Before we get into the discussion portion, I'm just curious, how many people have attended a talk before about VR or AR? Okay, just about, I'd say 75%, that's pretty good. How many people have spent money to do VR, either buying a piece of hardware or at a VR arcade? Okay, maybe less, maybe 25, 40% maybe. How many people have an active VR or AR project going on right now? Okay, wow, that's a lot of people. I'd say maybe 35, 40% of the people here. Excellent. Okay, so we have our work cut out for us. We have some experts out here in the crowd, right? So the first question I would put to the panel, and does anybody want to go first? We'll see who reaches for the microphone. The first question is, call BS on me. I think screens are dead, or they're dying. I think VR and AR is what comes next. I think there are amazing content opportunities for new experiences, monetization, user interface. If you agree or disagree, tell me why, and tell me when you think this might occur. Sure, Amy.
I really, I love AR, actually, and I think that the technology to put, the heads-up display and to put information in front of you so you're not looking down is really pretty, it sounds like a simple task, but like incorporating productivity apps and different ways to engage with your environment that takes out that cognitive load, like navigation or certain things that you normally would have to search for and stuff. So I think AR is really going to, be pretty pivotal.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Another voice in the media industry, Alay, you and Amy have both worked in VR and AR. Do you feel like AR is the greater opportunity for media, or VR? What do you think?
I think AR is the more immediate possibility, I would say, just because, with the R-Core, R-Kit, and, it all coming into
Mobile
the
AR,
phone,
yeah.
there's going to be this natural evolution of augmented reality. So I think that's going to hit. But eventually, I do believe they're going to start merging, and to answer that question about the screen, right, I'll jump to that because I've thought through that, because we all want to know where that goes. And, we find ourselves in the same situation when mobile devices, or Motorola was launching the first mobile device. How do you get enough battery? How do you get enough connectivity? How do you get, minimize latency? How do you get better screen resolution? All of that is a problem. And for that to kind of get solved, even simple things like what's my data plan going to look like when I have AR and VR, right?
Right.
Who's going to subsidize? How are the telcos going to subsidize it?
Right.
All that is going to have to be worked out. And so I think eventually it's going to be an XR kind of a situation. I think we're talking about that with, I think the device is this, where you can switch between real reality, augmented reality, and merged reality, with a click. And once those technical problems get solved, I think you're going to start seeing that around the 2025.
So
where
7
you're going to
years.
see some of these things starting to appear with true adoption around 2030. That's my guess.
Well, it's an educated opinion. You've been around for a lot of technology shifts. I'm interested, Heather, with Porsche, you all have so many different opportunities to create that heads-up display for your customers, whether it be reflected on the glass or in the console. I know in the automotive industry, there's been talk about maybe AR manuals replacing some of the dusty paper manuals that might be in the trunk or the glove box. Are you all waiting for smartphones to be replaced with AR, or are there other places that you're looking for that?
Yeah, so I would say what we tend to think about is what AR, at least for today, what AR enables. And the way we often think about it is how do you provide as much information in the context, regardless of the hardware. Right, I think that the shift, going back to the previous conversation about the mobile or the phone or the glasses, it's really less of a hardware discussion. It's really about what is the user trying to do and what's their specific need. And so what you'll see and what we try to do is look at, in context, what are the tools that the customer has and what are they really trying to achieve and what's the best way to do that. So when we look at customers, end users, people driving their cars, we're still going to be continuing leveraging their mobile device because that's what they have with them that already has the connectivity, that already has the access and the tools, and it's what they're used to using. Where if you look behind the scenes, what we're doing with the service gentlemen, right? They already have the physical thing they're touching, right? They're already there looking at the physical car. They need information to help augment that car. So, we want to give them the AR smart glasses because we want them touching the thing in front of them and have the information overlaid. So I think it really, for the time between now and whenever the future ends up coming, it really will depend for us on what does the customer need to be touching and doing, and what really is that action that they're trying to support, and then how does AR facilitate that?
Right. No, it's a good point that enterprise AR has a chance to break out before consumer AR because people can get paid to wear stuff on their face that maybe looks funny. Julie, at Southern Company, I know that you all have put a lot of time and energy into figuring out mobile solutions that help all your different customers. Seeing this on the horizon in your innovation role, what steps would you recommend for people out here to take at their companies to champion this stuff ahead of time? Is it thought leadership internally with talks? Is it brainstorm facilitation? Is it proofs of concept or prototypes? How do you all navigate that?
So we do a little bit of all of the above. We do facilitated discussions. We're trying to educate really our executives about some of the new emerging technologies because some of them are a little more tenured and may not be thinking along some of these lines. So we're trying to raise their level of awareness so that we can create company-wide strategies around it versus things popping up in various silos across the business. But I think the expectation, especially as kids that grew up using technology all their lives, move into the workplace, I think that expectation is going to be there for the workplace, that this will be available and accessible. So right now we're trying to do a lot of education about the various forms that it can take.
Right. That's good. One of the things that strikes me is that this is probably more important right now than it is urgent. I mean, the urgency is there, but it might not be as urgent as some other issues that companies are facing. So it can be difficult to get people to think about this amidst all the other things that are on their mind, IoT, 5G, security, cybersecurity, et cetera. Chloe, your company, Polyport, you have a differentiated solution that helps people protect 3D assets that they might need for this immersive transformation. How do you help introduce this to people in a way that's not overwhelming? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. We're kind of at the perfect stage right now to be able to implement this solution because while there's this new explosion of AR and VR adoption, it's still relatively low within the overall community. And so this provides us with a great way to make sure that the security architecture is there before it becomes widespread because, as I mentioned before, with all of these potential ramifications due to manipulation of objects or when you're outsourcing work to others, think about, compared to a physical manufacturer, if someone, a competitor, a hacker, or even someone inside your organization gets access to that code and rips it off, think about how quickly they could stand up a competitor, right? So for us, there is a lot of education around it. I think that the biggest aspect is, we're talking about in the entertainment industry, that there's such an archaic way of protecting your assets right now. I mean, we've talked to companies where they'll take a hard drive, send a person over to China to show a new prototype of a car because they're concerned of how else are they going to do that. So there is a lot of education around that. We've found a lot more adoption and people understanding what we're doing within the aerospace industry as well as defense and commercial contracts. But I think that getting kind of a head honcho, a big fish in the entertainment space to be able to say, this is how we can really implement this, and being the first person to do that is how it's going to happen in the entertainment space especially. So
Yeah, and it's really important to think about assets in preparation for this industry. We live in a 3D world, but we're living it through our 2D screens. And as we move to this next step, we have to capture or create all the things that we want to show people. And some people are solving that through paying modelers to like copy things that exist. And some people are taking the standpoint of like doing capture, where you surround an object with cameras and then a computer figures out how to turn that into a 3D model. And to your point, the security of those assets, whether it's cars or nuclear reactors or journalistic captures, from some hotspot in the Middle East or something, it involves rights, it involves security of assets, it involves different levels of detail for different people with different connection speeds. Not everybody's going to be 5G right off the bat, right? So it's important that we start now. I think Williams-Sonoma just spent $100 million cash to buy a company just to capture all of their SKUs on a regular basis, because they're always making stuff and putting new stuff into the market. So some companies are feeling the urgency to do that now, and it's just something worth considering. I'm curious, all of you get, big brands, all of you get exposed to a lot of people pitching you, and you also have a lot of people bring you the best, latest, and greatest devices or use cases. Amy, we'll start with you. What is maybe not the coolest thing, but maybe the most practical or best use case that you've seen for any of these technologies?
Well, it's interesting because, when we were designing the CNN VR app, the decision, for many reasons, scope was one of them, but there's a challenge with using live video because we are part of a community that's tied to cable licenses. So I think what would be interesting, and we were talking earlier, is if there's ways to improve the friction to authenticate, and just that ability on the user side to be able to consume content and a variety of content without having to remember different passwords, or it's a very cumbersome process.
Right.
And I don't think we're unique. I think many media companies battle that.
Well, you all are using the bridge of the phone with Oculus Go, right? People authenticate on their phone, they pair it with the device, and then if you have to do authentication, you've already got that covered.
Yeah, you're still really tied to whatever store that platform has on the web. So when we were on Google Daydream, we had to enter those pieces there. So it's a multiple step process, and so I think what I'm seeing now are more interesting ways to try to circumvent that. Although we're part of a larger ecosystem, so it's all right now we're really in discovery mode.
Got it. So authentication is an area of greatest importance or urgency for you all right now?
It's a big deal. That is, in our opinion, that's our primary value that we give to the consumer is we have live news coverage, and that's really, why different platforms want us, on their platform. Yeah.
So thank you. Julie, as a utility company, you all are all about delivering value. What are some of the interesting use cases that really have drawn your eye lately?
So one of the more interesting use cases that I've seen recently is we have a somewhat aging workforce, and we have a lot of employees that are planning to retire in the next few years, and they've got a lot of knowledge in their head.
Right.
And knowledge transfer is a big issue for us, and we do see augmented reality as an opportunity to maybe take that knowledge out of someone's head and then more quickly take a newer employee and have them learn how to do the job that's at hand. Right. We're also focused on trying to serve our customers as efficiently as possible. So in the past, we might have sent employees out with a more knowledgeable worker, and then you've got two of them on the job when you really only need one to do the job. Right. And we see this as an opportunity for us to maybe put more employees out in the field on their own, but arm them with the knowledge to be able to do what they need to do to serve our customers.
Fantastic. Yeah, we see that in the market too, where especially in the infrastructure space, you have critical knowledge that is walking out the door, the brain drain, right? So using immersive technologies to capture that knowledge and then letting people do those things instead of just watching it on a screen or reading about it in a book.
Exactly.
I can see that makes a lot of sense. Alay, you have a lot of experience in this space. What's your favorite use case for this technology? What's going to help it break through?
I think, and I'll talk about AR and VR separately, just since it is a little different right now. I think eventually it merges and becomes one. But I think the immediate use cases are the ones we've seen, with the gaming, with the product realization, IKEA, Lowe's, et cetera. I think those are going to be big, and they're going to be. But my favorite use case, which doesn't exist yet, and I think is going to be revolutionary, is going to be the social, either an augmented,
Right.
or a virtual, or a mixed, or an extended, whichever word you want to use, social platform. So think about not just Facebook, but the entire social participation, social exchange occurring in a world without you really having to be there.
Yep.
I think that's going to be a massive change. You can't even imagine.
Didn't IBM do something with that? Like with Second Life, they had a bunch of people have virtual meetings in Second Life 10 years
Yeah,
ago.
virtual weddings and
What's
virtual
that?
dating.
Virtual
People
weddings
got
and
married,
dating,
I think,
yeah.
I mean, so I think it's going to be beyond that, right? I think it's going to really change the way we think about everything, like you said, 2D, and it's going to be 3D, and it's going to blend in a way that
Yeah.
it all kind of comes together, and I think that's going to be a very interesting use case, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Has anybody had a meeting in VR yet with Facebook Spaces or similar? Talk to Ian in the third row. He's got an interesting telepresence solution with HoloLens and maybe some other platforms now. But we use it for remote meetings. If we're meeting with somebody overseas and we have something we want to demonstrate, we do it in Facebook Spaces. It's cheap. Everybody's got a Facebook account, or hopefully most people still do. And there's a lot that you can get out of that you really can't get out of a WebEx or a Zoom meeting or whatever. So I would encourage you to try it, even just among family first. It's a really interesting experience. And if you haven't checked out a company called immerse.io, IMMERSE.io, they have VR setups that work in a headset or in a browser even, that you can do interactive stuff together collaboratively. And it really shows the promise of collaboration online. Heather, I would imagine being a sterling brand like Porsche, that you have agencies tripping over themselves to show you cool stuff. What has lit you up? Like, what do you go run and tell people about?
That's a good question.
You
I'm
want us to
trying
come
to
back?
think. No, I'll come up with one. I think that the things that as a manufacturing company, and because we are so proud of our of the engineering that goes into our cars, I say the thing that I always get excited about is any of the AR or VR applications that really focus around how do we take those dusty old manuals, the visions of what we see coming in the future for our cars, and then contextualize them in ways that we can actually play and think about them, right? Whether it's it's a pre-product or pre-launch campaign that we're looking at to think about what is this car of the future going to be, or it's a classic car, right? Similar to the Southern Company example of we pride ourselves on having 70% of the cars ever built are still on the road. That means we don't have 70% of all the technicians who've ever worked on our cars out still in our dealerships. But how do we kind of better bring that to life and bring that knowledge, that the stickiness of what working with your hands gives you that experience to bring, and then use AR to really kind of bring that to life in a way that kind of pulls you in and out of the physical asset.
Right. Keeps you from having to stop what you're doing and go consult something else.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Chloe, have you seen interesting tools popping on the market that people, obviously, the two biggest games in town for creating this stuff are Unreal, which is a game engine, and Unity, which is traditionally a mobile game engine, but it keeps getting better and better. Are there creation tools that you're excited about that you think that your system will secure from Adobe or Unreal, or where do you think that innovation is going to happen?
Well, what I think is even more interesting is more of the full pipeline to manufacturing, per se. And there's actually a company that we are working with called Create It Real. And they develop PCB boards that fit into all of the FDM and SLA printers. They're working on the larger manufacturing machines right now, but they provide security from the slicer all the way to the physical product. So by being able to partner with them, then we can protect the 3D object from the moment that you create it on your 3D software program all the way to the physical product. So that's more so what I'm really excited about, because that's an end-to-end type solution. As for creation tools, I mean, there's new things popping up every day. I'm pretty excited about the new Creators OS, but that's
Right,
that's
Magic
about
Leap,
it.
yeah.
So.
Very cool. Well, that's a great way to segue. By the way, how are we doing on time? We're good? Keep going? All right, so devices. I had a slide up there before that had all the different VR devices and AR devices, and there's new ones all the time. Windows Mixed Reality invited this kind of Windows clones dynamic where we got Dell and Lenovo and HP and everybody's got a headset. I'm interested to just poll the group here and do you have a favorite device, VR or AR, and why? So we'll start with Alay.
I again want to think about the future, and I think it's going to be this. If I look at it right now, I still think it's going to be a phone for the next 2 years in terms of augmented reality, virtual reality. I think the untethered, devices that are now popping out, I think are going to be much better because they're going to provide you with the ability to move and the spatial aspects of it.
Right.
So I think that's really where I think Magic Leap is definitely the one that's most exciting.
They're pushing the boundaries of all the things
No
you talked
question.
about, right? Battery life, field of view,
Yeah.
screen refresh, right?
Even simple things like all-day battery, right, doesn't exist, number one. Heat management, that was
Right.
one of our biggest issues when we were doing VR and AR. How do we manage heat? And then you put it on your head. It's like a
Right.
tough thing. So how do you make it comfortable? And then we had people who wanted to throw up when they used,
Right, the latency,
and
right?
things like that, I think need to get solved. But
5G is really important for latency, isn't it?
5G is going to be huge.
Yeah.
I think 5G, Wi-Fi, the next level 5, Bluetooth for the accessories, going to AD. All that's going to make a difference.
So you feel like the all-in-one category with the Oculus Go that Amy's got a demo on, that's the most exciting category for you right
That's what I think.
now? Okay, good. So Julie, you probably have a fair amount of gear over there at Southern Company. Is there AR or VR or mobile version of either that's got you excited?
Well, I agree that, if anything that you could put on the head as that can be better as the technology advances, leaving hands-free to do makes a lot of sense. But I'm kind of old school, and I still like the iPad screen
sure.
a little bit
Yeah.
right now. Take it with me where I go.
Accessibility is a big deal, right? We've done some work with executive B2B marketing, and they don't like putting plastic on their face, and they don't like waiting in line, and they don't like sweaty headsets. It's got somebody else's germs on it. By the way, I brought my own one from home, so if you think I don't look clean, maybe try it somewhere else. But in any case, yeah, that's one of the things that we really like about the iPad too, is that it's easy and you still get to inhabit a virtual world in a manner of speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So Heather, how about you? What's your most inspiring device for this stuff?
So the one that I'm kind of mildly obsessed about, or particularly interested in at the moment, is the new Toshiba AR headset that they've released. I think, or they're releasing. I can't remember where it was. We were able to see a demonstration a couple weeks ago. And what I thought was particularly interesting in kind of how they've designed the application is they've looked to see how can we create a single system that we can then pull and use for multiple purposes. So they've basically miniaturized the CPU into something that's about the size of your, iPhone, whatever phone you have. And then you're able to pull as many different headsets into it. So right now they've got a mono lens, AR glass. They're looking at a bifocal lens. They're looking at eventually, right, because it's your CPU, you take your glasses off, you plug it into a screen, and now that's your main computer. So being able to use the back end for as many different applications as possible. So you have all the tools that you need in that specific instance. So I think there's an interesting concept there, whether that hardware specifically
just kind
will
of the
continue to
modularity of
move.
it,
But
yeah.
the idea of really having the application and the hardware support as many different opportunities as you need them, instead of just investing into a single piece of hardware and then having to have 5 or 6 different versions of hardware.
Got it. Oh, that's really cool. Chloe, it sounds like you all have a very serious angle to the application of your technology, whether that's for asset security or manufacturing. Is there a particular device that's got your attention right now?
I was going to keep it short and sweet. I'm in the same boat as Julie right now.
Uh-huh.
So,
Doing
no.
this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, pretty much with the iPad.
Right
So,
on.
nothing crazy there.
Cool. Amy, what about you?
I agree. I really am excited about the Magic Leap one that's coming out, and I think I was fortunate enough to go to Florida to see their prototypes, and so you know my background.
Tell us everything.
It's pretty amazing. You know, my background is design, and so I'm really intrigued by like the excuse me, the interaction patterns and
Right.
and how you know the user can actually feel the experience. There's a lot of great things that are happening in that space. So,
Right.
But they are really coming out with some really great tech that I think will convince people. Plus, combine that the headset itself is pretty light as we've seen in the photos and stuff.
Right.
So
I think they could use some industrial design help
yeah,
on the
I
headset.
think so.
It's a little
It's definitely
awkward.
a first generation
Yeah.
for sure. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You know, this panel is, it's great to have this group up here, and I hope you get the chance to talk to them both in questions and then afterwards. But, you know, we don't have as much time as we would like for this. Just to poll the group quickly, if you had one piece of advice to give the audience here in terms of what they should be doing now to prepare for the eventual move from screens to what's next, what would it be? Alay?
I mean, I would say that there is no force fit when it comes to AR and
questions?
VR. It's going to be find that sweet spot in whatever industry, market, product that you're going to do, and look for the enabling technology and make a small start there. I think there's based on my experience, I think that's a better way to kind of do it versus saying, oh, I'm going to do AR, VR because I have to do it. For example, media, there's a need for immersive storytelling, and therefore, it kind of fits. But if there wasn't, then why?
Yeah.
So I would say look for that sweet spot and start there.
Okay, Julie?
I agree. I think that makes a good point. Don't try to force fit, but see where the opportunities are, and then seize those opportunities early, and then educate those that may not be as aware about the value that has come from seizing those opportunities, and that will just create more opportunities.
Very good.
Find a need and get it in the hands of your users. I think the technology is going to continue to change so much. This is your opportunity to get in and to see how people are how it can fit into their daily lives, how it can fit into what they're trying to do, and to get their feedback so when it does hit, you can roll it out. So, right, don't just play with it inside your house. Don't just play with it with your executives. Get it out there, have someone try it, and see kind of what their reaction is to it.
If you have sensitive data, please protect it wherever it goes.
I agree with all my fellow panelists. I definitely think a test and learn model, start small. We came across a lot of just unexpected issues, and we did a lot of usability testing too, just even if it was guerrilla testing with people in-house. But what we learned over the course of, we're on our 4th product now in the marketplace, was that, the user is also learning, they're very new, and so they're, there's a lot of learning together, basically, and that influenced a lot of our interface choices.
That's some good
So-
advice. Just to chime in, we find that people succeed when they get close to the customer, where they don't get mystified by the hardware and they just focus on the real use cases that immersive technology can bring. Do we have time for a few questions?
Yeah, let's open it up to the audience and see if you've got some questions.
Great. Okay, does anyone in the back with the sweater? The question is for Amy at CNN. How do we deal with disability and accessibility? Can you talk about how you...
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a consideration. I would say in the VR space, we're still learning how to incorporate we do accessibility design work for our website and for our apps. So we have, there's definitely guidelines and conventions and insights that we're building. And we do a lot of user testing. In the VR space, I mean, we do on the ground usability testing, but I don't feel like we've really nailed accessibility, to be honest. I think that's an area that we really need to be more mindful of. And to be honest, I'm really encouraged by the work that Leap Motion is doing in terms of their interaction, their UI, because that really is intended to help with accessibility. So that's something that we would like to devote more research into.
So two companies that sound similar, but you all should be paying attention to both of them. Magic Leap has a new headset coming out this year, and they've gotten a lot of rights deals and very high-profile people to test it and say that they like it. Leap Motion, on the other hand, is a little sensor that goes, you can kind of Velcro it to the front of your VR headset, and it lets you work with your hands. And not like Microsoft, where it's just like this or like this or like that, but really doing all sorts of gestures. And they have a prototype headset called Project North Star. This is Leap Motion, that really has a lot of elegant gestures and things that you can do, and I would agree, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Do we have another question? Yes, sir. So this is, Mr. Shim talked about latency as an issue for immersive media, and people are focused on that, but he also highlighted the need for great content, and he wanted to know what the panel thought about, what's being done with content and where are the opportunities. We have some media people on the panel, we have some marketing people on the panel. Any takers?
I'll take it.
Okay.
We jumped into AR, VR at Gannett almost 4 years ago, right? So we actually had to build our own cameras and do our own stitching. None of it existed. And content was our biggest problem.
Right.
And it still is an issue. I know of a number of startups that are actually creating 360 video content for sale, as well as creating VR templates that are going to be easily available. And I think there aren't any, I think you haven't heard of too many big companies yet jumping into it, or if there are big media companies doing it, they're doing it to use in-house, but there are a lot of small startups that are working. And if I've seen projections, content is bigger than hardware or software in the space. Yep. So,
I've kind of
Oh,
an
please.
interesting
Yeah.
add to that. So we've been in the VR 360 filming space for about maybe 3 years now. And so one of the nice things about CNN is people really do embrace technology. And so we have bureaus all around the world. So we basically, my colleagues and I, we designed these camera kits. So it's literally a GoPro stitched together with instructions, and set these kits all over the world. And that, even though that now by camera standards they're dated, it did give us really critical footage of, horrific events in Syria. There's lots of footage that was captured for protests in Madrid and Greece and other areas. But it was really the spirit of experimentation of the reporters that are, actually kind of waiting for a breaking news story. And so they learned how to set up these, GoPro cameras in the field. And then what we would do is we would stitch all of that back in New York. And so we had, and it's getting easier now to stitch video and
For
stuff.
sure.
But,
Just a quick follow-up to that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't fault anybody for feeling a little desensitized to traditional media news. It's in every corner calling for our attention all the time. With immersive media like VR and AR, can you give us just a hint of maybe what some of the new opportunities for journalism are in terms of really getting to the viewer and like helping inform and change their mind?
Yeah, I mean, because, Americans especially are not traveling like they used to, right? So we feel really strongly that 360 video enables our reporters to really, get into a story that people would never, or most likely wouldn't be able to access. So we feel we're very committed to that, mission. And it's worked well for us. So I would say, like, because of the nature of stitching and the amount of camera kind of kits that we have in the environments, we probably produce, maybe it's like 8 to 10 videos, and now it's kind of ebbed a little bit. But we really try to have pretty new footage for our consumers to check out. And what's nice about 360 is you get a huge audience on Facebook, 360, but you can also bring them into immersive experiences like CNN, VR, and Oculus.
And just a quick side note, for anybody that's interested in 360, we also have Dan Smigrud here in the front row, who leads a worldwide community of 360 capture fanatics, people that are interested in the medium. So definitely some good discussion to have there. Are there any other questions? We talked a little bit about the technology aspects of immersive and with the changes that are required there, but on the storytelling side, do you want to start off, Amy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, it depends on the nature of the story. Like on the protests, because there's been so many in the last couple of years, a lot of it is capturing the action around you. And so there may not be, from a narrative standpoint, it's really like the narrative's happening around you. So it's literally, standing there with the camera to try to get all of that. And we feel like that's a very important part of the trust in the brand too. Like we try not to manipulate anything. Our colleagues on the editorial side have done a great job with narrative storytelling for things like, going inside a pyramid, or they went behind the scenes of Phantom of the Opera last year. And so there is kind of a range. I think New York Times is doing some really beautiful work with storytelling that really fits their audience and their brand. And I think, the work that they've done is really beautiful. But,
very cool.
Yeah.
Yes, as an entrepreneur, we want to get a poll of the panel of which industry vertical would be the most lucrative opportunity for an entrepreneur to engage with the immersive technology. So let's start with Heather.
I will at least answer it from our biggest challenge is taking all of the non-digital assets we have as a legacy organization, moving them into digital CAD designs that can actually then be leveraged by the AR, VR technology. So we're always looking for who out there can help us take that information, digitize it, blow it out, kind of do all the renderings and kind of provide that high level quality. I don't know if that's the most lucrative, but there's a lot of legacy companies out there who have a lot of data that's not organized or not that pretty. So that would be something that we'd invest in at least.
Cool. Somebody at Epson probably had a pretty good idea before the flatbed scanner came out. They probably sold a lot of scanners, right? Anybody else on the panel want to take a stab at the most lucrative vertical?
I agree with Heather.
Yeah.
I'd say content, if you really want to focus on it, starting with 360 video, the ability to provide, whether they're clips or the ability to provide content to media companies, to advertising companies, I think that's huge. I think the whole product realization aspect of it with the R-Kit and R-Core that's coming out, I think that's going to be a huge area in terms of who gets the best apps out there.
Right.
I think those are those are big ones. And Unity, of course. Unity, I mean, the software dev part of it.
Can I drill down just for a second on that? Why do you feel that way? Is there any data backing that up that you've seen?
If I've seen the market CAGR for like content in VR and AR projections, and they are bigger than the devices or the software pieces of it. That's one. And I think the second is personal experience. We couldn't find, and we still can't find good content because it's really expensive to create content.
Right.
And that's huge. And third, I'm part of a startup that's doing exactly that.
And 5G can't get here soon enough, right? Because these experiences, the best way to get at them is through a device that you can take anywhere. And if you can't pipe those content experiences down to you, either they're going to degrade and not look as good, or it's going to limit people's level of detail or engagement. Anybody else before we move on to the next question? Amy.
Well, I was going to say not media. Actually, I think the healthcare industry has a lot of opportunities that are just untapped. And I think especially with AR, combining the friction of health records and drug interactions, and also you can actually see someone's profile and medical history that I think would be incredibly valuable to any sort of diagnosis.
Where you're bringing information to a moment.
Yeah. I just think that and I think that right now, machines like MRIs and CAT scans, they haven't really advanced in 10, 15 years. And here you're using devices that actually read your brain waves and analyze your pupils. So I just think that is going to be a huge area to, in my
There was
opinion.
just a conference, a VR for healthcare conference. I want to say it was in Boston, maybe last month. They had some really cool applications. They were showing MRI data over somebody's body with an iPad or different devices. Like, I would echo
cool.
like the healthcare thing.
Yeah.
Any place that you want to bring a lot of information to a moment.
Absolutely.
Are there other questions? And this is Gaspar Ferrero, who is a local AR and VR developer, and some of his work has gotten out onto the internet. Very popular, very innovative stuff, so thank you for coming tonight. We're going to use this question because we have a lot of people in the audience that have tried this before. Haptics, right? It's how you feel digital objects using ultrasonic technology or pancake motors and gloves that help you feel digital objects. So the question is anyone on the panel currently doing anything with haptics from an R&D perspective? Or if not, what are their thoughts on it and why aren't they doing it? Who goes first?
We've looked into it, especially for our customer experiences where they want to touch and feel the leather or touch the carbon graphite in the vehicles. I'm trying to get them to feel a little bit of that, the feeling in their VR AR space, and to get some of the remote the touches back, right, when they're touching the steering wheel, when they're touching certain buttons, etc. But we still haven't figured it out in a great way to crack it and to kind of bring it all together. But we definitely think, right, that having it as immersive as possible is certainly something we hope to get to. We're just not quite there yet.
Very cool. All right, well, I think we're out of time. And so I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Let's give a round of applause for our panelists. If I could say one more thing, it would be that we rely on people in the telecom industry to create the technologies and the devices that are going to carry all these great experiences to people. So thank you for what you're doing in the industry. Thank you for coming tonight, and I hope to see all of you out there in the community. Thanks.
Well, thank you again, and I want to thank the panel. I think there's some great thoughts here, and what I got out of it was basically, as you look at Gartner's hype cycle, we're out of that trough of disillusionment and we're getting into the slope of enlightenment, right, before we become productive. So we're almost there, but I think that's kind of where I think, based on what I heard, we are at. Again, thank you so much, and thank you, audience. Our next meeting is June, the third Thursday in June, and we'll be meeting here, and that's all about autonomous cars on the road. And I'd like to give you a small token of appreciation from the Wireless Technology Forum. Thank you. And thank you, and thank you so much for moderating. That's a nice job. And thanks, everybody, and good night.